Namaskar and welcome to In Focus. Is the Samta Party jockeying for position, or does it really have substantial differences with the BJP? It's an important question because it could affect the future of the BJP-led alliance. With me is the one man who should have the answer, the president of the Samta Party, George Fernandes. Mr. Fernandes, in recent days, members of your party, including yourself, have spoken in public about differences between the Samta position and that of the BJP. Now, is this just part of a bargaining ploy for more seats that you want to fight, or are these actually matters of substance?
Well, we always had our differences with the BJP. Our manifesto for the last elections stated those differences. Our policy statement, which was drafted in 1994, states those differences.
And these are substantial differences?
These are substantial in the sense that we are a socialist party. We are a party which has a certain commitment to the heritage of our freedom struggle. And as socialists, we have certain very strong views on what kind of a society we are going to build.
Okay, let's first talk about views and policies. The BJP has announced that 3 cardinal policies are going to be part of its manifesto. These are namely the creation of a Ram temple in Ayodhya, the abrogation of Article 370, and the introduction of a uniform civil code. Do you support those 3 positions?
You see, we have very clear positions on all the 3. Insofar as Ayodhya is concerned, our point is that the matter is before a court of law, and till the court settles it, nobody should interfere with it. Insofar as Article 370 is concerned, firstly, you will need to amend the Constitution to abrogate it. For that, you will need a 2/3 majority. And this thing can be done only when you get into a kind of a dialogue with people. And in my view, on Article 370, you should have a dialogue with all those who believe that this is something which is of great consequence for them.
And on the Uniform Civil Code?
On the Uniform Civil Code, our belief is that it should be only and only after discussing this whole issue with everyone concerned.
Well, you see, there may not be actual matters of substance that differentiate between you and the BJP, but certainly in terms of tone and manner, they are saying different things. Both Mr. Advani and Mr. Vajpayee have recently committed themselves personally to introducing a Uniform Civil Code. Now, if you disagree with that, then we're talking about a fairly substantial disagreement, aren't we?
Yes, but I believe that there will be time after the elections to discuss this again. After all, this was in their manifesto in the 1996 Lok Sabha elections. But when Atal presented his whole program before the parliament and the country through the president's address, you know that all these 3 items are not part of his agenda.
Absolutely, but now when they're talking about the manifesto, and Sushma Swaraj has said this repeatedly on television and in the press, these 3 things are going to be part of their manifesto. So there seems to have been a subtle change between the May 96 position, when Mr. Vajpayee did not talk about this, and the new manifesto in 98, when they're deliberately highlighting it.
I'm afraid, I think it was there in their manifesto in 1996.
But it was not talked about after he became Prime Minister, neither in his address to the nation nor the President's address to Parliament.
That's right, but before the elections he did, and during the course of the campaign he did, and all of them did.
Precisely, but do you wish, as one of their so-called allies, that in creating the 98 manifesto, they had followed the precedent that he established after he became Prime Minister, when he avoided these issues, rather than following the precedent of the manifesto?
I visualize a government which will be a coalition government after these elections. It is not going to be the BJP government. It will be a government in which there will be at least half a dozen parties, which are its allies, if you want to call them, or who are having seat adjustments with them. And once you go in for a coalition government, you will have to have a common minimum program. And that common minimum program will be a program of various parties. There will be inputs from all of us.
You put your finger on the second problem that I wanted to raise yourself. You want a common minimum program, and your party wants it before the elections. The BJP has refused.
This is not true. I do not know how the media can create an issue and then start answering it or contradicting it. I have never asked for a common minimum program. On the contrary, from day one, I have been saying a common minimum program is only when you go to form a ministry, not before. At the moment, I want to go to the people with my manifesto, with my programs, with my policies. This is an opportunity for me to educate the voters on what I stand for.
So at this moment in time, just to clarify, you have not asked for a common minimum program before the elections?
No.
So
no.
you are prepared for allies, so-called allies, to fight on different manifestos which could be substantially contradictory to each other, and then create a common minimum program afterwards?
Not just prepared, I insist. I have always insisted that parties must go to the people with their program, with their policies, and when they come to form a government, they should go in for a common minimum program.
Okay, since we're talking about the common minimum program, let's just pursue this a little further. If the BJP, as the polls suggest, comes in as the single largest but short of a majority, and in that situation comes knocking on your door for support, will the common minimum program be one condition for the support?
Yes, without a common minimum program, we didn't get into a government last time also.
And you won't this time either?
No. In fact, last time, Atal, the day he was invited by the president, he rang me up and he called me over. Nitish and I went to his house. He took me by the hand, took me to a separate room and said, you have to be sworn in along with me tomorrow at 12 o'clock.
And you
I
refused?
said, I'm sorry, I can't. I won't. Then he said that, but we can drop the program later. I said, no, unless the program is drafted, no. So we discussed all these matters.
And did they make any effort to draw it up in the next 13 days that followed?
Yes, because once the president's address was ready, in which all of us had our little say, once that address was ready, and when he suggested that we get into the government, we had reached a stage by then when we knew that this government was not being, was not receiving the kind of support it needed.
Okay, so to extrapolate forwards to 1998, are you saying that this time round, if Mr. Vajpayee comes again and holds your hand and says, George, join my government, you're still going to say, not until you have a common minimum program first?
Absolutely.
And are you this time hopeful that he will have a common minimum program before he gets sworn in?
Well, I think it will be difficult for the reason that the president will call you the moment the house has assembled and there is, you are able to show that you have the majority support. So once the president, or you have emerged as the largest single party and the president calls you in keeping with the existing norms. And once that happens, the government is sworn in anyway. And thereafter, the question of program will come and the program will have to be presented in the president's address.
So what you're saying is this time round, like in 1996, Mr. Vajpayee will be unable to have a common minimum program before he gets sworn in. Therefore, you will not be a member of any government that he forms on the first day, and you will only join afterwards if there is a common minimum program.
On the other hand, there could be an understanding before being sworn in, before the Prime Minister is sworn in, understanding in the sense that he'll come and say that we agree on these things, the formalities will be undertaken later.
Are you saying that an understanding could take the place of a formal common minimum program?
Yes, it is possible because it's a question.
So then on the basis of that understanding, you could agree to be sworn in on day one with him?
Yes, it's a question of mutual trust.
In which case, why can't you have the common minimum program or that understanding or whatever else you want to call it today?
For the reason that we want to go to the people with our respective programs.
But what is the point of going to the people with respective programs, making promises based on manifestos that you're then going to jettison to create a common minimum program?
No, promises are not going to be jettisoned. Promises will then be welded into one. And such of them which are irritants will be jettisoned for the time being.
Precisely. And the three cardinal promises that happen to be part of the BJP manifesto this time round, you know the ones I'm talking about: Ayodhya, Uniform Civil Code, and abrogation of Article 370. Clearly, let me make that a question. Will you accept them as part of a common minimum program?
I will not accept them as part of a common minimum program.
So they're going to have to be jettisoned?
I don't believe that these are their cardinal programs.
Well, now that's a question of belief. But if they're part of their manifesto, whether they're cardinal or not, you're saying they will have to be jettisoned because they won't be part of the common minimum program.
Yeah, that's my position, sure.
So the BJP will be fighting an election on the basis of a manifesto, a substantial part of which will have to be jettisoned if it actually wants to create a common minimum program with you.
Well, that's the reality. I mean,
what's the morality of fighting an election where you promise these three things and then turn around and say, okay, for the sake of forming a government, we're going to forget about what we promised?
No, no, no. There's nothing immoral about it. What the BJP is promising is that if we get a majority on our own, this is what we will do. By the same token as I promise that if we get a majority, then these are the things that we will do. Or if we have a decisive voice in the next government, these are the things that we would like to do. Now, we may end up with a number of members who will not be in a position to have any decisive say. And they may end up with numbers where they will not be able to have a government of their own. So therefore, there is nothing immoral. This is how politics is
No, there's
run.
nothing immoral because obviously you're hoping you'll get a majority on your own, but knowing that you won't, emphasizing three things that you also know that in that situation you won't be able to fulfill is a little dubious.
No, that's why, Karan, I began by saying that parties must go to the people with their programs because they need to educate the people what they believe.
Why
what they
can't
stand
parties in India do what parties abroad quite often do, which is to agree on a common minimum program beforehand and present a united front?
I'm sorry, sir, that is not how coalition governments are formed. In Israel, for instance, the Likud party, which is an arch-conservative party, and the Labour Party, which is a very radical party, they don't go with a common program.
They very rarely end up forming a coalition either. They only did it once. What about Germany, where the Christian Democrats and the other Christian parties are all separate entities, have their own separate administrations, yet they form a common minimum program?
Yes, but when the Christian Democrats and Willy Brandt socialists formed coalitions, it was not that they went first with the common program. Just now, just a couple of 2 months back, there has been a coalition in Norway. Bondevik has become the prime minister. Bondevik has only 25 seats in a house of 200. They don't go, he's a conservative, and others have joined him.
Let me come back to the German example. Kohl frequently fights elections and as coalition partners with other German parties, and they always have an alliance. In fact, he does it even with the Free Democrats.
I'm sorry, the only party with which they have coalition is with the Christian...
Socialists, so the Christian Democrats.
No, the Christian Democrats, the Bavarian party.
That's right, the Christian
So it's a regional party. In Bavaria, the Christian Democrats do not have a branch. It is the party, Christian party of Bavaria, with which they have a formal coalition. And their ideology, their whole approach to everything in Germany is identical.
Okay, let me put it like this. At the moment, the BJP is part of the Sangh Parivar, and clearly it is very close to the VHP. Now, the BJP is saying that Kashi and Mathura have nothing to do with its own agenda, but the VHP is insisting that Kashi and Mathura are things that have to be attended to. Now, as an ally of the BJP, does the opinion of its other allies worry you?
Well, my party's manifesto very categorically mentions Kashi and Mathura and says that Ayodhya should not be cited in order to have Kashi and Mathura. We have said that in our manifesto. We said this back in 1996.
Yes, but your allies are saying something else.
Well, the allies may be saying it, but my allies are not saying it. They are repeatedly saying it is not a part of the BJP agenda.
But does it worry you that your allies, if they come to power, could be under pressure from people like the VHP to start influencing and moving in this direction?
Well, it will worry me. It will, as it should.
And what are you going to do about that worry?
Well, we'll deal with that when it comes.
No, why can't you deal with it now?
Well, at the moment, I'm not really threatened by it, or I don't really believe that we'll have such a problem.
Then why do you say it worries you?
Well, if it should, since we are discussing hypothetical matters, well, as a hypothesis, yes.
What you're saying is it worries you, but it doesn't worry you enough to do anything about it.
Well, that's one way of looking at it.
All right, Mr. Fernandes, at that point, let's take a commercial break. I want to come back in part 2 and move from talking about policy differences that you may have with the BJP and move to other more practical differences. But first, a commercial break. Don't go away. We'll be back in just a couple of moments. Welcome back to part 2 of our interview with George Fernandes. And by the way, if you heard strange noises in part 1, it was only Mr. Fernandes' dog. She clearly likes her master's voice. Mr. Fernandes, in part 1, we were talking about what I called policy differences between Samta and the BJP. Let's now move on to more practical differences. You split with the Janata Dal over the issue of Lalu Prasad Yadav and corruption. Today, as part of the so-called BJP umbrella, you've ended up with Jaya Lalita, who faces charges of corruption, who spent time in jail, as an ally of yours. Now, is that acceptable to you?
Well, I have expressed my unhappiness at that agreement. And
sounds like a very mild word, unhappiness.
Well, what more could I do? It's, after all, a relationship between the BJP and the AIADMK.
You see, I'm back to the question I asked you in part 1. Your allies' allies are now your allies too. You expressed reservations about the VHP in part 1. You're now expressing reservations about Jayalalalitha in part 2. But at the end of the day, every time you accept, you end up compromising part of your image, don't you?
No, I'm not compromising any of my principles, any of my positions on whether it's programs or whether it's in dealing with individuals or parties.
Okay, let's put it like this. If you are not compromised because of your allies' allies, then what sort of an alliance is this? You're saying, I accept that bit of the BJP that I want, and the rest of the BJP which I don't like, I don't accept.
You see, we have at the moment only a seat adjustment. Our alliance is confined to adjustment on seats. There's nothing more to it. Tomorrow, when it comes to forming a government or sitting in the opposition, then it is another kind of a relationship, where you have an issue-to-issue relationship when you're in the opposition.
Tomorrow, when it comes to forming a government, if Jayalalalitha has any MPs to contribute, they'll be sitting in government too?
Well, that's a question which has its import. I'm not dismissing that question lightly, but that's a question which you should address to the BJP.
Well, no, I'm addressing it to you at the moment. Suppose, let me repeat in a different way the question I asked in part one. Suppose the BJP becomes the single largest party, comes knocking on your door and says, support us, George. You said one condition would be a common minimum program. Would the second condition be keep Jayalalitha and her MPs out?
Well, my second condition will be that there will be no compromise on corruption at any level, and not in the abstract, but in the concrete sense of the term. There are a number of cases currently on, from Lalu Prasad Yadav to a lot of people here in Delhi to down in Tamil Nadu. And as far as I am concerned, yes, that is the position.
In the concrete sense of the term, that's your phrase, would a compromise happen if Jayalalitha or her MPs were part of the government?
Well, how to form the government is the business of the party that is being called to form the government.
But whether you participated...
Yes, so whether to support that government and be a part of that government is for my party to decide. And that's a decision which we'll take at the appropriate time.
But are you therefore saying that if Jayalalitha is part of the government or her MPs are part of the government, you won't support it?
On the other hand, they may not be a part of the government.
I know, yes, but you're not answering my question. If they are part of the government, will Samta support it?
I am unable to answer that question at this point.
Because you don't know the answer, or because you don't want to give an answer that's
no,
uncomfortable?
because I don't know the answer, because this is something which will need to be discussed in the party. And
Mr. Fernandes, you don't know what direction your principles lead you in?
Yeah, my principles have led me to a point where I have very strongly opposed this kind of an understanding.
Then just go one step further and say that my principles also say that if Jayalalitha or her MPs are part of the government, I at least won't be part of it. Can't you say that?
Yes, then I'll be speaking only for myself and not for my party.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, as far as I am concerned, there is no compromise on these matters.
So if Jayalalitha or her MPs are part of the government, George Fernandes personally won't be?
Yes, it could be that way.
Why do you use the word could?
Because it depends on what the party finally decides in these matters.
So even as far as your principles are concerned, the party will determine what action you take?
Well, then I can take, I have the option of taking other decisions at that point in time, but if I preempt my party from taking a decision, that will be very unfair to the party.
Mr. Fernandes, you're an absolutely master politician and a great linguist, but a lot of people listening to your answers are going to say he's saying one thing at one moment, he's saying another thing at the other, and it seems that he's got principles, but he also wishes to be part of the government, and he's torn between the two.
I have refused to be a part of a government earlier. I have got out of a government when I need not have got out. So therefore, I don't think my own track record is such that anybody can have that kind of a misunderstanding about me.
Okay, let me come to something else. You've said that Article 370, the Uniform Civil Code, will not be part of the Common Minimum Program. You've also said that the abrogation of Article 370 is something that you're not going to support, at least not until Parliament passes it. Now, how difficult will it be for the BJP, when it seeks to create a common minimum program with you, to leave out these commitments at that stage?
You see, there's one point which you should remember, and that is, on 370, on Ayodhya, on the Common Civil Code, it is not just the Samta party. You look at any of the parties which are supporting the BJP, even Bal Thackeray's Shiv Sena. Bal Thackeray took the credit for demolishing the Babri Masjid, but Bal Thackeray today says, not a temple, but let's have a national monument there. This is Bal Thackeray's position. And Bal Thackeray is one of the more important allies of the BJP, unlike me, who only have seated just.
So what you're saying is you're pretty hopeful that under the influence of Bal Thackeray at one end of the spectrum and people like you at the other end of the spectrum, the BJP could come around to the same opinion too?
And the Haryana Vikas Party, and some others who are now joining up with the...
So what you're saying is a collection of smaller tails are going to end up wagging the BJP dog?
Yeah, that would be very
unfair. If you forgive that phrase.
That's not a very appropriate phrase where running a government is concerned.
Except that they're going to be far and away the biggest party, and you're actually saying that the position taken by the allies is going to determine, in fact change, the position taken by the huge bloc in the center.
Would not be good if they change.
It would be wonderful from a lot of people's point of view. I can't presume to answer that, but are you really seriously hopeful that they will change just because a collection of allies are telling them to?
Well, if a government has to be formed, then that's it.
On a scale of 0 to 10, what is the likely prospect that they will change in the direction you're suggesting?
Well, all that they have been doing while running the governments in various states indicates that as they take responsibility, there will be changes that will come about.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the sort of changes that are taking place in the BJP. You're an ally of theirs. You probably understand them better than anyone else does. Can you say from the changes that occurred in Mr. Vajpayee's tone and language during the 13 days he was Prime Minister, and from the changes that you're now predicting will happen in the future, that the BJP is moving from an ideological position to a more pragmatic and practical position?
Yes, perhaps you are right in making that formulation.
Does
But
that-
I do not believe that ideology has been jettisoned by the BJP.
But it's been put on the back burner.
Well, I think that's about what can be said about it.
And are you also saying that this is happening because the BJP is becoming closer to power, and therefore ideology becomes less important and the practical reality of power becomes predominant?
Well, I think that would be true of any party. Any party which takes an extreme position. All over the world this has happened, that people have gone into power by saying that they'll reduce the taxes and they'll do this and that. These are the issues in many parts of the world, and end up by pursuing policies which are very pragmatic.
People say that the BJP is only doing this because, in fact, the closer it comes to power, the less it cares about its principles, the more greedy it becomes about attaining office.
On the contrary, I think when you take extreme positions when you are in the opposition, for the reason that you are fighting against a government which is also a very, very evil government, and then you reach a point where you are in a position to deliver the goods, and then you move away from your
Is the
extreme
corollary
positions.
of what you're saying that the closer the BJP comes to power, the more moderate it will become?
Yes.
And therefore we will see in Mr. Vajpayee, except in name, another version of the sort of weak Congress alliance governments that we've got used to in the recent past.
No, I don't think so, for the reason that between the Congress, which is which cannot be called a political party anymore, but between the Congress and the BJP or any of the other parties in this country, there is a world of difference.
Okay, let's sum up the position we've reached so far in this interview. You said you have some differences with the BJP, but clearly these are also differences that don't worry you too much, because you're pretty hopeful that when it comes to a common minimum program, you'll get over them. Yet, you've left yourself the position that you may not yourself personally join the government. At the end of the day, you're really just jockeying for seats. That's all you're doing when you raise the banner at the moment of the differences you're talking about.
Well, we are a political party, we are fighting the elections, then should we not be interested in getting seats in the parliament?
Absolutely. But why don't you say that more openly, and why do you clothe it as you are at the moment in the garb of policy differences and manifesto differences?
But Karan, I didn't raise those differences.
I mean, the press has played it up.
No, I didn't. Not even the press. It was Sushma Swaraj, the BJP spokesperson, who said that all our associate parties or friendly parties or whatever have accepted this program.
So you're saying the BJP presumed too much?
Well, I don't know, maybe it was a mistake, maybe it was a slip of the tongue, maybe for a moment she didn't know what she was saying or the implications or import of what she was saying.
Do you think there's any danger that the BJP was trying to roller coaster its allies into some sort of agreement that they weren't prepared to make?
No, I won't say that, because they know that most of its allies are not in agreement with some of these things.
If your attitude to the BJP is really as sanguine as you're making it seem to be at the moment, then why are you talking so often to Ram Vilas Paswan?
Ram Vilas Paswan has been a friend of mine. Ram Vilas Paswan.
And that's all it is, just a chat between friends.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have not discussed any kind of a political realignment with Ram Vilas Paswan.
Are you talking about the possibility of a post-election realignment?
Not at all, not at all. I don't see any post-election realignment other than the three formations that are now there. The only possibility is that...
Are you inviting him to contest an election under the banner of the Samta Party?
Well, I have not invited him, but if he comes and joins us, I'll be most happy.
Has he indicated that he might want to?
No, he has not.
Has he asked you?
No.
Have you discussed the subject?
No.
Not in any shape or form?
Not in this, not in the manner in which you are suggesting.
In what manner have you discussed it?
Well, we joke about these things.
And many a truth is said in
We
jest?
can always say, छोड़ो वहाँ और यहाँ आ जाओ.
Many a truth is said in jest. छोड़ने वाले, यहाँ आने वाले?
नहीं छोड़ेंगे.
नहीं छोड़ेंगे?
I know that. नहीं छोड़ना नहीं.
लेकिन बुलाने की कोशिश तो की थी आपने.
हम तो सबको बुलाते हैं, ऐसी बात थोड़ी है कि उन्हीं को बुलाते हैं.
और बुलाने के समय पे बीजेपी को पूछे बुलाया था आपने या उनके पीठ के पीछे बुला रहे थे?
बीजेपी जब लोगों को बुला रही है तो हमसे पूछ के बुला रही है. वो भी अपने ढंग से बुला रही है.
So, my last question then. If the BJP were to form a government, and if at that stage they were to agree on a common minimum program with you, will you, George Fernandes, be part of that government or not?
Too premature to answer that question. As of now, I don't think I will.
On that point, Thank you very much for speaking so openly to us. That's it for this week. We'll be back next week with another interviewee. But for today, from Mr. George Fernandes' residence in New Delhi, goodbye.